Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Westward Ho. I'm Phil West, and we're back on this adventure to talk about God's favorite conference. And we're recording the day after what might be the most MLS After Dark day in the history of MLS After Dark. So we're definitely going to get to all that. And I'm joined as always, because we're 2 for 2 now, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey Phil, how you doing, man?
I'm great. I stayed up way too late last night between the writing and the editing and the press conference and watching what was, definitely an instant classic, I think, in terms of 2022 MLS games.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah. I mean, how do you go to sleep after that? And I was going to
I
say
know.
for anybody that's listening, if you've ever wondered what Moon Tower Soccer might be without the calming, guiding hands of Landon Cottam, I think we're going to find out. I think we're going to find out exactly what it's like on this show tonight. But luckily, we have a guest here who's going to hopefully help us get through this and
Yeah,
in a
absolutely. Yeah,
calm
no,
and direct fashion.
yeah, so we always joke about LAFC being Jeremiah's boyhood club, based on his few years of fandom before Austin got a team. But our first ever guest here to Westwood Ho is Josh Cacho, and he is of the Counterpress podcast, and that's dedicated to all things LAFC. And in case you had any doubts about his fan allegiance, you can find him on Twitter at LAFC Josh. So he's going to keep it black and gold. So welcome.
Guys, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, what can you say about last night's game? That was insane. I actually happened to be at the stadium last night.
Oh, nice.
My wife and I last minute decided to go, and man, I don't think I've been outside of the CCL game against Leon. That was probably one of the more intense games that I've been um, able to attend.
Yeah, for sure. And I can only imagine the penalty that didn't happen in the latter stages of the game there didn't pretty sit well with a lot of the fans there, right?
Oh no, I mean, I think it's always different in real time because you're just kind of sitting and waiting, right? So you don't have the commentary or the replays to be able to kind of verify, whatever your concerns are. But when you're kind of just sitting there and you just see him kind of walk away, and that the replay just happened to take way too long. I mean, it's like what,
Hmm.
that's the thing about pro referees at this point. You know, you just want a little bit more consistency. Like if you're gonna go to VAR, just make sure that why would you spend another, 5-10 minutes looking at it again? It's just one of those things. But maybe a pet peeve of mine. But it is what
Right.
it is.
Yeah, it
It
was.
makes
I mean, it was fun though. I mean, yeah, even when it was 2-0, I didn't feel entirely secure because again, yeah, we're going to talk about LAFC and kind of the year that they're having as a big focus of what we're doing here. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into that. So again, I did want to ask you one thing. So I've been curious about this. I'm going to go to my first game at the bank next month. I'm covering for FC Dallas writer to cover that Dallas LAFC game, which I think is going to be pretty wild and pretty fun and pretty intense. But I've been outside the stadium and I noticed kitty corner from the stadium. There's a place called Mr. Fries Man. Is this
See,
a good place to go? Do you recommend it? Or?
I mean, I've only walked by it to be perfectly honest. I mean, there's because of just the amount of good tacos in the area.
Yeah.
It's hard not to just especially for me. I drive about an hour and 15 minutes to go to the game. I live out in Loma Linda, California, so we're in the Inland Empire, away from the stadium. And so when we come in, that's always our first stop is to go grab some good tacos somewhere in and around the area. So can't say that I've been there, but I mean, for as long as I've been going to LAFC games, it's been there and still busy. So I'm assuming it's probably somewhat decent.
Yeah, I mean, good tacos is also speaking my language. So
Yeah, I mean, there's always the tailgate outside the stadium as well.
I went to a game there and I ended up I parked in some lady's garage that that had an apartment building close by. It was the match when LA won Supporters Shield, and what was that, 2019?
Mm-hmm.
It was when they beat Houston, and I got to see it on the field that night. It was a great time to be in town. But yeah, I parked at some lady's garage and trusted that my car would be back, and then walked. I think I had street tacos somewhere down there that was pretty good. So it's a great environment.
Yeah, it's either that or a hot dog as you leave the stadium from one of the many carts that will park outside the stadium as you walk out. But I mean, that's kind of the downside of the location, kind of close to USC. Like the Coliseum has never had good parking for as long as it's been there. The lots that they've since put in have made it a little bit better, But even then, one of the parking lots that you share is with like the museums right there, right next to the bank as well. So, you can only do so much.
Yeah, I've actually been to that museum with one of my kids. That science museum. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, so it's a good spot. So yeah, so I'm very excited to go there next month. So yeah, so let's talk about it. So again, just kind of here's the drill. We tackle a big question every week. We get into a couple of side dishes, and then we close out by talking about the 3 things that we're looking forward to as the weekend starts. So our question this week might seem a little bit odd to the Austin fans. I mean, again, Austin just beat LA, just got into the West lead and the Supporter Shield lead, but I think this is still a very relevant question, just kind of given where things are. So our question we're going to tackle this week is this the year LAFC wins MLS Cup? So I'll run through some brief facts, and then let's talk about all of what's going on here, and definitely have some questions for you, Josh, as we pick apart or learn more about LAFC, depending on your perspective. So they're still having a great start to the season. Wednesday was their first home loss. They are 7-3-2 on the year. Same as Austin. They have a +10 goal differential compared to Austin's +13. So last night even lost some pretty interesting numbers showing their potency. They won the XG battle 1.9 to 0.7. They dominated lots of other stats. 14-1 on corners is kind of the one that jumps out to me. Want to talk about Carlos Vela a little bit. He talked in post game last night about wanting a contract extension. He also became the 3rd fastest to 100 goals plus assists in MLS last night with his PK conversion. Only Sebastian Giovinco and Robbie Keane got there faster. And then they're still the odds-on favorite as of May 6th, which are the last numbers I pulled up, to win MLS Cup. That's +400 if you are someone who likes to bet. Austin FC, Sounders, and Galaxy are all next in the West, way back at 1,400. And then their next 5 at Columbus, they host the Quakes. They're at Seattle, they host the Red Bulls, then they host Dallas, and that's the one I'm going to. So first thing I wanted to ask about is Steve Chirundello. So he's good, but he's also a first-year coach. And, we kind of saw some growing pains in Austin here with Josh Wolf in his first year, just kind of the things that he's trying to institute. So, Josh, just want to get your take on it, first of all. Just is he a coach that can get them there to MLS Cup? What are you seeing so far this year?
So obviously the team was spoiled in the first couple seasons, under the tutelage of, the legend Bob Bradley, right? But his style, I think, soured on both the players and the fans as time went on. I think grown men get tired of getting yelled at by another grown man at a certain point in time. And you see it all the time in professional sports where you just see that the message, no matter how good it may be, just often will get lost. And it's just in one ear, not the other, because again, it just may not be the what you want to hear as an adult. And so what Chirundello, I think, brought to the table, right, was, I think, one of the best things he has done has not to be in putting his stamp on the team, is not to move completely away from what had got LAFC to where they were at. I think John Thornton, said, made it clear that their goal was, to try and retool rather than rebuild. And I think it kind of irked some LAFC fans there, because after obviously the last 2 seasons we've had, to hear that we're not going to, throw the baby with the bathwater. I don't know why that's a term, but what, but yeah, but to kind of just scrap the whole thing and start from scratch, I think kind of irked some people, because obviously you wanted to see big time changes after what we had been experiencing, and coming in again, it hasn't been so much of a dramatic change, right? You still have a lot of familiar faces around, and I think that's been key to his early success. Kept Ante Razov on the staff, brought back Mark Dos Santos, who had been on Bob Bradley's staff in the beginning, and then obviously had brought in a couple of his guys. But when you kind of put it all together, I think the big thing that kind of stuck out was just a little bit more pragmatism, in the sense that when you listen to Bob talk, when you listen to Bob's approach to things, right, it was very much a purist approach to football, right? I don't know what happened to him post USMNT runs, where he was this pragmatic 4-4-2 style coach, and then all of a sudden he turns into everything has to be the beautiful game, right? Jogo bonita, right? Where it's passing, it's movement, it's all these things, and sometimes, at a cost, right? And you would see that times where, where they're pushing their fullbacks high when half the team is, the team had been decimated with injuries over the last year, and you're still bombing forward, no matter what. Now, at least prior to the last few games where we've had a run of injuries, you saw a little bit more of pragmatism, especially throughout the game. So you would see them be a little bit more defensive, a little bit more stable, and just kind of provide a platform for the attack to do the thing, as opposed to, again, having this total football approach that we'd often seen in European football.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the retool. Are there particular players you think that have come in during the offseason that have contributed to that, like, positively? And is there anybody you're disappointed in that you've seen come in?
So I think the big one was that everyone has been really happy about has been Maxime Carpeau, right? In goal. We had such a run of bad luck with our goalkeepers. Tyler Miller, for as well as he played, right, just had dreams of Zlatan at all times, basically, after that first traffic over, right, where you could tell that ghost was just haunting him in all the big games. Because again, you just had this in this, while he played well for the most part, there was a sense that he was just indecisive in moments, didn't have the same command that you need to really marshal an attacking defense, an attacking side, like the way LFC likes to play. So that was the big one, right? To have a guy that you can trust to win you games, right? And early on in the season, we saw that he made big saves in big moments, has kept us in games. And obviously, we've been going down early at times. In a bunch of the Austin game was no different, right? Give up an early goal, and then you have to play from behind again. But he's a guy that at a certain point can win you a game, and he's definitely done it for Vancouver at times. Did it against LAFC in last year, where he's a guy that can stand on his head and have a game of it. So that was the big one. Kellen Acosta was the other big time signing that we saw come in.
Yep.
And the biggest issue right now is that they've had to shuttle him to right back, right? So we had Hollingshead go out with injury. Franco Escobar picked up a knock a few games ago, I think against Portland in the Open Cup. And so what initially had looked like a pretty deep roster has now suddenly gotten bit by the injury bug and looking a bit thin in some of these areas that we once thought we had a little bit more stability. Excuse me. I think the part we're probably most disappointed with has been the lack of progression from the midfield, right? You would expect at this point, with some of the guys that they brought in, right? And under the U22 initiative, you had Cifuentes and Pancho Janela, both of whom played yesterday, just haven't quite made the impact, especially at the price tag. And I think that's probably where we've seen it not come together. Actually, the new guys I felt have actually done a pretty good job of fitting in and giving a lot of stability. So I think at minimum, what we've saw comparatively to years past is there was a time where LAFC ceiling seemed like it was through the roof, but the floor was just as low. Versus this team, I'm not sure quite what the ceiling is, but I definitely think the floor is much higher when you have the presence of MLS veterans like Carpeau, Costa, and Hollingshead.
Right. Yeah, there's two attackers that I wanted to ask about in particular, get your thoughts on. I mean, Christian Arango, I think is fantastic. So far, 16 goals, 4 assists in a little over 2,000 MLS minutes. And then there's Brian Rodriguez, who to me seems kind of somebody who would be really frustrating to kind of follow. He's got 10 goals, 10 assists in 3,300-ish MLS minutes. So just your thoughts on them too.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with Rodriguez because obviously he's had a little bit more of a tenure with the team. And I think his progression was stunted by when they did not sell Diego Rossi. So when you look at how when they brought him in, they sold Andre Horta after that failure of a DP. Right, he ends up going back to Portugal after a back pass that never basically ended his career in a Trafico. Right, after that moment, you bring in Rodriguez to be that third DP. In the summertime, and the assumption, and from what we could understand, was that when you watch him when he plays, his best position was the same as Diego Rossi's,
Mhm.
right? It's and when he plays with the Uruguay national team, right, it was on that left midfield or left wing, being able to cut inside and do his thing. But that's exactly what Rossi was doing there. And also, when you look at all the guys that LAFC had at the time, right, most of the forwards want the ball coming short, right? They want the ball at feet. They want to be able to dribble. They want to do certain things, and so the attack just became redundant. And then I think he struggled under Bob. Again, he just didn't seem to click with Bob. And from what we've heard from various people that are involved with the team, is that over the last year, after kind of going, I think he had went on loan to Almeria in the second division of Spain, and just made a mess of it. Right? Didn't live up to the price tag, didn't live up to the expectations of the fans there. Kind of just a hot mess. And so coming back to the team, kind of had like a moment where he had to kind of look at his career and say, okay, where is this going? And from what we understand, Ante Raza played a big part in his development over the last year. And he actually finished this past season pretty strong, right? I think his goal against the Galaxy was probably his crowning moment as an LAFC player at this point. And even last night, the second he steps on the field, like you see the potential, you see the what he can do. It's just a matter of how it all fits together with Carlos Vela and Arango right now, right? And obviously before with Diego Rossi. And so that brings us to Arango, who, in absence of Carlos Vela, was excellent, and since Vela has returned, has been pretty poor. Again, most of his goals came in that right when Vela was, I think, still dealing with it. I believe it was a hamstring injury last year. I mean, he'd been out for like I think 3/4 of the season or something along that line, and just has not found the way to connect with Carlos Vela. You can just tell the chemistry feels off between the front three. When Rodriguez is there, he and Vela do work a little bit better because he's been a little bit more willing to make that back post run when Vela's on the ball. But that's kind of the big problem is, again, you just feel like they're not quite anticipating where they need to be in attack at this point. Again, you haven't had actually a sustained amount of time with those three together, very much, even though they've actually been on the team together for almost a year now. They just haven't seen the field very much together at all.
Well, so you mentioned the depth on defense. So how about Giorgio Chiellini? What are the rumors there? You guys going to get a 37-year-old Italian fullback?
Sounds like what this team needs.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it definitely moves away from what we've seen from the front office at this point, right? The front office for a long time had been trying to identify young talent and then bring them up. However, heading into this season, we saw a major shift in kind of the approach, right? You had seen them move towards a more MLS heavy more veteran side, a team that was going to provide a better environment for the young players to develop, I actually think. And I think the guys that they actually missed the most over in these past 2 seasons where they were performing a little bit more poorly were guys like Steven Beitashour, right? An MLS veteran, a guy who is going to be a leader in the locker room, that's going to mentor those young guys, and they just didn't have that over the last couple of years. So you see, guys like Ilie come into the team from SKC. Right. You see Hollingshead, right? Another guy, guys in their mid to late primes that are still very effective in the league. And again, with Chiellini, you have to obviously you wonder what's left in the tank. However, the last time we saw him in an extended run, he was winning the Euros in a back four. So, do I have the question just becomes what are they asking of him, right? If they're going to ask him to play through the summer, in the dead of heat in Los Angeles, good luck, right? That's not going to work out well for anyone involved. But if you're going to tell me at a decent price, he's going to come in, be a mentor / coach on the field, and a guy that can bring, that can basically bring along a guy like Fall, right? Who seems to have all the potential in the world, and turn him into a potential world-class center back. I mean, to me, that I think there's something there, right? Again, you have enough depth there with Murillo, Segura's coming back from injury, and Fall, where again, is it absolutely necessary? That it does bother me a little bit in considering where there seems like there could be other needs. But again, if the price is right, I'm not going to say no.
That's such an MLS answer, right? For everything. Everything depends on the price, right? Because it's such a salary cap league and such a structured league.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You were mentioning Mamadou Fall. I mean, how much fun is he to watch develop and grow?
I mean, for a guy who was playing in Las Vegas, a year ago, to a guy that's become probably one of the top under 22 players in the league, and at 19 years old to have the passing range, to have the wherewithal to play with some of the best players in the league, game in, game out. Yeah, it's impressive. It's exciting to see a guy that we've really developed, and I think and Chirundello played a big role in his development and also in him coming up, because I think that's what had happened at the end of this year. They're going through an injury crisis when Segura tore his ACL, and Thornton went to Chirundello and asked him who's that guy they're going to bring up. And I think there was some talk about some of the other guys. He said, no, you want to bring Fall. And next thing you know, the guy's setting the league on fire. So it's fun to watch. He's a fan favorite. Like every time he scores off a set piece and he jumps into the stands and puts the sombrero on, right? You can't help but root for the guy and hope that he continues on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, we enjoyed that last week. We talked about that. So yeah, let's go ahead and answer the question before we move on to some of the side dishes. So, Jeremiah, I want to start with you. Your boyhood club. What do you think? Are they primed to win an MLS Cup this year?
Is this the year? Phil, that's an impossible question to answer. I'm gonna cop out on that. Like, I mean, watching that game last night, I was terrified the whole time. And this is why I didn't like the VAR review, because I feel like it's just like extending the drama for everybody on both sides, right? Like,
Yep.
I just want it to be over one way or the other. But I mean, they're so deep, and if they stay healthy, they're so deep and they're so talented that I think that they have the strength to make a deep run. Maybe this is their year to win it, because they could stand up to the grind of an MLS season more than just about anybody else.
Right. Josh, what do you think?
If there was ever a team that has the floor to do it, it's this one, right? Like I said earlier, how many times have we seen Seattle lose for the first third of the season and you're like, oh, they're done. And then all of a sudden they're at MLS Cup, as the seventh, they limp into the playoffs as the seventh place team, but have won their last 5 games straight. And then, have a series of 1-0 games to the, all the way to the cup. I think that this team is built more similarly to that than what we've seen in the past, where, again, I think when you have some of the young talent they've had, ceiling is really high. And you saw that in the Supporter Shield race in 2019. But this team seems like it's built more to withstand the grind, especially with the guys that you've brought in. So if there's ever a time, it's probably this one. Again, my biggest concern is I don't know where Carlos Vela is at, right? And from... and we see it all the time, right? In my profession, I'm a physical therapist, during the day job, and a pretend MLS analyst by night. But, you see that drop off in athletes as they hit, as they kind of get toward this age. And again, you see flashes of it still with Carlos Vela. I think, the way that he's able to ride off tackles, you saw it when he picks up the penalty. His ability to just keep people off the ball and maintain his balance is unrivaled in the league. However, sometimes you just wonder how much he cares, right? And it's always been a question from Mexican national team fans, right? I remember when prior to the start of 2018 season, my buddy and I were thinking about going, okay, we're going to get tickets to go to the first game, talking about the things. I remember they signed Carlos Vela, and my buddy, who's a huge El Tri fan, was like, oh, that's who they signed? He's like, have fun. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was basically like, he's a guy that has, he has the talent to be up there with some of the best players in the world. How many times do you take a look at the La Liga scoring table, and he's up there for 1 month, he's scoring as much as, scoring up there with Ronaldo and Messi. And then for the next 3 months, you don't hear a peep from him, And so that has kind of been his track record. What the things they've always said is he likes basketball more than he does football. So again, I sometimes I do wonder where his head's at. I hope that getting this contract, the contract extension done, does more to settle that, because I think there was this weird feeling because his contract ends like in June, or was it July, June, something like that. Like, it's kind of a weird situation, right? And yesterday was kind of, I think Tom Bogert today revealed that even though they've come to an agreement, he still hasn't physically signed the extension. So I don't know what that's about, because they announced the extension like a month ago.
Right.
But he's, again, maybe he's just trying to angle for a little bit more after the salaries get released. But again, I think there's rightfully some questions about what you're getting for $4.5 million a year, and whether or not that should continue moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's a big question. I mean, again, I think LAFC does still have a DP slot to play with in the summer as well. So it's going to be interesting, because I guess Chiellini, if he came in, would come in on a TAM deal, which MLS, so and MLS salaries. Yeah, I mean, I could commit them to Final Four right now. I mean, I think Summers. Yeah, I mean, does Vela sign and commit? What do they do with that DP spot? Does Chiellini come in? If he comes in, yeah, like you're saying, do they try to just, grind as much as they can out of him, or do they save him, largely for that playoff run? So, but I think it's interesting. And I mean, I think, again, I mean, we're speaking here from people from Austin, but I mean, if it's Austin against LAFC in a conference final, that to me seems like a whole lot of fun. So, if that happens, certainly we can, reconvene and talk about that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so let's move on to some of the other side dishes. And I put this in the form of a debate question, and you can answer yes or no to this, and we'll get into some of the games. So Resolve last night was the most MLS After Dark night ever recorded.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, I can't keep up with everyone, but it was a wild Wednesday night, and I am tired and underslept because of it, because there were so many things going on in so many different places, for sure.
Was there anything for either of you that jumped out? Because I definitely have a game that jumped out other than the one that we all watched.
I mean, the 37 red cards in the SKC game. I was what? I just see a bunch of people talking about something going on in SKC, and I'm looking down like, what is happening?
Yeah, I was covering that for the league, and I was just trying to wrap up, and it's like, okay, I guess this is going to be a 2-1 finish, and then Trusty gets the second yellow, and it's like, yeah, okay, and this is like at the start of stoppage time, and then people missed it. Daniel Shallowy, who had 2 goals in that game, became only the 5th player in MLS history to get 2 goals and a red card in the same game. Taylor Twellman has also done this. But yeah, so basically he, Mosqueda from Colorado was setting up for a free kick, and Shallowy just kind of out of nowhere came and kicked his plant leg, got a yellow, and then they reviewed it for a red. Meantime, Shallowy's walking away. Estevez from Colorado, who scored Colorado's goal, 2-hand pushes him in the back, down. This is right in front of the ref. And then Fontes from SKC, for some reason, just decides to grab the neck of a random Colorado player, again, right in front of the ref. So that will get you a red card every time. So that was a hot mess, befitting the hot mess that is Kansas City as a city. Yeah, and again, I mean, like SKC, I mean, they finally had a game where they looked like they were pulling some things together, and then they had these injuries. Oh, by the way, both center forwards in the game, including Gazi Zardes, went down with non-contact leg injuries and were out in the first half.
Yeah, never a good sign. Again, I feel like it's just consistently, we can't blame the turf this time, right? Because I think that was the big talking point after I think, was it in Atlanta, where you had Guzan, and then was it Ozzy Alonso towards ACL as well?
And then Miles Robinson, yeah.
Right. And so, which, again, there is a little bit of merit to the Achilles things. From the research, the knee injury stuff is a little bit less clear when it comes to some of those things. But again, never a good sign. Obviously, some of the stuff comes to fatigue and the way that these guys are having to play, but who knows?
Yeah, it was a weird one, though. Anything else jump out to y'all?
I think beyond that one, the Vancouver, the Whitecap. What does your daughter call them? The
Whitecap Cougars.
The Whitecap Cougars. Yes, coming back and picking up a penalty in the 90th minute to take Dallas out, which also led to Austin moving to the top of the table. Was definitely an interesting match too.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a game where Dallas got a goal right before halftime, looked like they were cruising, and then all of a sudden Vancouver finds two late goals. And Lucas Cavallini's looked really good the last few games after kind of disappearing for a lot of his time there. So that's Vancouver's still kind of mired near the bottom of the table right now in the West, but again, they show flashes. Vanni Sartini, our favorite coach, that is not Josh Wolf, I guess. Maybe we like him even more than Josh Wolf. Who knows? I don't know. But he is definitely fun, definitely quotable, and it's nice to see Vancouver do well. Dallas could have taken the lead in the West and the Supporter Shield with win, then that didn't happen. Then also, Seattle beat Houston 1-0. It was a goal that had a 22 pass buildup. So
that's what I'm talking about, Seattle, right? Like, how terrible have they looked, during their CCL run? But then, and without João Paulo and starting like a 12-year-old in midfield, somehow are putting it together. Like, they're, I think they're the system and the organization as a whole, right? Is and again, Seattle people, probably don't want to. Will love to hear this, and the rest of the league will hate me for saying it. But again, it's been a model franchise, right? In terms of how it's run, how they're able to bring up young talent to be able to do those kinds of things and plug in random guys in those kind of places. Again, to be able to stem the tide, even with the loss of some of their guys, again, it's something to kind of to look at, right? And I think it's probably a big reason why LFC decided to go and sign the guys that they did over the offseason.
Yeah, if you look at them, 5 days ago, they're sitting at the bottom of the table, and now they are 2 points out of a playoff spot. Like that's what it took. And Colorado, Houston, is probably looking in fear at them. I think they've got matches upcoming against a lot of the teams they're competing with. So I wouldn't be surprised if 2 weeks from now, there they are in 7th place, just creeping up the table.
Yeah, it's who is the league's like most consistent zombies? Is it the Sounders being able to do that, or is it RSL? Who I want to talk about this a little bit too. So the annual MLS PA salary info release happened this week. So got to see kind of comparative strengths of the league. Both Atlanta and the Galaxy had more than 20 million in guaranteed player salary, and for the Galaxy, 6 million of that was for Chicharito. RSL bottom of the league with just over half of that at 10.47 million. Obviously, Rusnak was one of their higher paid players, and he went over to the Sounders in the offseason to kind of, bring that narrative a little bit closer together. Does anything jump out to y'all in any of that?
Money doesn't buy you wins.
Right.
Right.
It's one of these things. It's spend well, right, versus spend a lot. Right. And you see it across the board, right? In across even European football, right, where you have like Manchester City being the exception, right? Who, because you just have this combination of unlimited spending plus one of the greatest coaches of all time, kind of put it all together. But how much money is Manchester United spend, to finish, in Europa League standings or just outside of it? So, obviously, I think there's MLS is that game, right? And trying to figure out, your identity. And I think if you can do that, even if you're an RSL, like they may not make a lot of money, right? But everyone that plays for that team buys into their style of just making things ugly. Right. And that's kind of the thing, right? And if you're willing to do those things, right, you're going to get results, much to, my eyes never wanting to watch anything that they do.
Yeah. And LAFC was kind of towards the middle of that. I kind of expected them to have a higher spend.
Yeah. Again, you have a DP spot open, right? So you have, and they've done a lot to try and, bring, to develop younger talent, right? So you have that Carlos Vela, he's usually the bigger end of the salary, but even then he's only, I think what is that, like 4.5 million in the last year of this contract, because I think his new contract hasn't been signed yet, so it wasn't reflected in what was there. Because I don't think, again, now we know he hasn't signed the actual extension. So, you probably have a ton of MLS, like max cap guys like Kellen Acosta, Ilya Sanchez, right, that are making that 400,000 or 500,000 mark, and that's probably about it, as comparatively to, the Galaxy, who have signed a bunch of guys for, like Diego. I'm not sure how much they signed Costa for. Douglas Costa for, but it had to have been way more than what he's providing.
Right.
I just can't believe that Shaqiri is the highest paid player in the league, and that seems like a very Chicago move to get him in. Because I don't know, maybe it's because I remember watching him at Liverpool, and he didn't seem like a guy that's worth the amount of money they're paying for him. And I guess obviously he's not a big draw. Like, you're not even. I mean, with Vela, at least you're maybe drawing in some teams of some El Tri fans or something. But I was shocked that he was the highest paid player in the league.
I mean, he's won everything with every team, right? Like,
well, he's been on teams. Yeah,
right? He's won a
things.
Champions League with like Bayern Munich, Liverpool, and with Real Madrid. I think Madrid. I don't know. He's won a lot. That's all I know. And so maybe it's like maybe the GM of Chicago just looked at his resume and didn't pay attention to what he actually done in the field. It's like, oh, he's won all this stuff. Go
get him.
Pay him.
Bring him in. Yeah. All right. So, and then also, this is kind of an interesting thing. So at this point in the playoff race, only 2 of the teams that were from the West playoff bracket last year qualified now. That's RSL, the aforementioned RSL. They were 7th last year. They're 5th now. And then the Raps are 7th now. They were, of course, the conference winners last year. And then Nashville were in the East players. The top 4 in the West all didn't make the playoffs last year. Just kind of wondering, do we feel like it's going to stay like that? Or do we feel, I mean, I know we're talking about like the Sounders making their move, but is there anything else that we're kind of expecting shift-wise, either up or down?
I mean, I guess Portland maybe be able to sneak into that lower echelon as well, but again, I honestly don't think that you're going to see much slippage from the top end of the bracket, right? And Colorado will probably figure some things out. Again, depends on what happens with Zardes, right? Because when they came in and we went out to Colorado, they put a whooping on us, and a lot of it is that 3-5-2 gives the 4-3-3 a lot of problems. Right, it's kind of like the perfect formation against 4-3-3 teams, and so, but yeah, health will obviously determine a lot. But they play hard for Robin Fraser, so I think when you look at the grand scheme of things, again, I say you don't really expect much from San Jose, Vancouver at this point. But again, I guess in SKC, which would have been the other team that you would expect to start to move up, doesn't look like they're really going to be able to find it this year. Just too many losses. They're missing Ilie as much as we're loving him in LA. But yeah, Seattle's probably the only one that I think is probably going to make their move at some point.
Yeah, Minnesota's one I keep expecting more out of, but I just don't think they have it. I think people were high on them last year and maybe a little bit this year, and I don't know if they're going to do that. So yeah, if you move Seattle in and maybe Portland, you guys have an opinion on who might move out? Like, it's hard to see who's going to fall out of that top seven.
I think Nashville's also going to bump some teams as well. I think they're going to find their way in the top 4 with all the home matches they have. And I mean, they handled Montreal, which, at the start of the year, that would have been like kind of a big deal thing, but Montreal's actually been really good this year. So, that's kind of almost a bizarre world MLS Cup matchup, right? So could you imagine, if it was Nashville traveling to Montreal for MLS Cup? And, I mean, it wouldn't be like quite in the dead of winter because of the World Cup and the way the schedule is, but still could be plenty weird. I mean, I look and I wonder if like Houston's going to get it back together, but Houston has this propensity to fail. I mean, San Jose has actually looked really good in the post Almeida era, but I mean, they are San Jose, and just they don't seem to have like the talent to consistently hold it together. But they do plenty of weird things in games that get them results.
I mean, not man marking for 90 minutes will go a long way to see some success in the league. And then Houston, right?
Who still moved to do that.
Yeah. And you mentioned Houston, right? They do have Ache coming right in the summertime, so that's another big move there. Again, I think the health, Zardes' health will probably determine where Colorado ends up here. I think, so I think that may be where the fight is as Seattle continues to make their push, and then again, Nashville as well. I just wonder where their goals come from.
Yeah,
right. It's just doesn't feel like they have a consistent way to put the ball in the back of the net. Whereas I think right now between Austin, LAFC, Dallas, and the Galaxy, those four teams, right, you know are going to score, and so again, and Real Salt Lake just does their thing. So, I would assume Seattle will probably move up, and Real Salt Lake will probably finish in 7th, right, and then no shot their way to a first round playoff win.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm still angry about that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. We're gonna go to the weekend now. Couple games of note. So we'll just kind of take these one by one and thoughts. I mean, again, yeah, the aforementioned Minnesota, wondering kind of if they're going to make a push. They have a big game at Dallas, or at Frisco, as we like to say. So is it too early to say must win for the Loons?
I think with Seattle, slowly crawling back up, I don't think it's too far off, right? I think if you kind of have to finish strong heading into that June break, and if you don't, I think it puts you in a bad position heading into the next phase of the season.
Right. And then let's see, we also have Colorado against Seattle. So obviously talking about Seattle climbing, Colorado, obviously they're probably without Zardes for this game. I don't know injury, but yeah, I mean, obviously that's going to be challenging. And then again, yeah, the question for Colorado without, Diego Rubio's done some things, but do they get scoring as well?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like I said, with Colorado, right? How many people are they going to be missing due to red cards? Also,
yeah,
so
that's very true.
Right. So this is setting up nicely for Seattle again to continue to move up there. I mean, just because Colorado seems to be dealing with a lot at this point.
Yeah, that win, if Seattle wins, that puts them ahead of Colorado on the table. So that's another team they're picking off as they finally move up. I mean, I think Seattle's run. I think maybe we talked about this last week. Like Seattle's run could be very much like NYCFC's once they finally got out of the CONCACAF Champions League, where they just reel off a bunch of wins in a row. So it seems entirely possible that this will be another one for them.
Yeah, and kind of like Austin in a way. I'm kind of seeing similarities with Austin and Seattle that they are good, talented teams, and then they're also seeming to catch teams at the right time. Like, Austin, much was made of, they started the season against Cincinnati and against Miami. And, Miami showed some flashes right after that, too. And Cincinnati has actually looked decent, dare I say, this year. So, but got them early into, in the season before they figured things out. And yeah, I mean, this is, if there's a time to catch Colorado right now, this is probably the time. So, yeah, even though it's a home game, it's, I mean, Seattle can certainly win on the road. And then last one I had there is Galaxy against Houston. I think that's kind of an interesting one. So just, I mean, yeah, Josh, you're a little closer to Carson than us. So just kind of any thoughts on the Galaxy? And I've heard a lot of debates about, their defense is really good. It's really stout. They've got it together. And then, I've heard some people say, yeah, defense isn't as good as maybe people make it out to be.
I mean, I appreciate you recognizing that Carson is done in LA. So we'll start there.
There you go.
Right. The next part is, right, I mean, the Galaxy are a lot better than they have been. Right. It's sad to say, right? But it's a legit team. Their defense is better, but probably not quite there. Right. You're still relying on a Raheem Edwards at left back who will somehow just end up pushing his way to striker and then leaving himself exposed along that line at some point. Like we had a whole year of that last year when he was with LAFC, and again, it hasn't hurt them quite yet, but there will be a team that punishes them, right? Likely Seattle will find Jordan Morris or someone tearing up that right hand side where he vacates. And so again, this is kind of interesting time because while Galaxy is playing Houston, LAFC I think are playing Columbus this weekend as well.
Yeah.
But we also have an Open Cup El Tráfico on Wednesday, right?
That's
so
right.
It'll be interesting to see how both teams play their rotations. I think that was why you saw some rotation yesterday from LAFC. Part of it obviously is injuries, but you had Arango come off the bench, you had Fall come off the bench as well. And I think much of it was kind of trying to navigate through these next few weeks because of that El Tráfico Open Cup game. Again, you normally are going to play your kids or play a heavily rotated roster for that Open Cup. But again, like there's a lot on the line with the Cup, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's a CCL spot, right? So there's only so many opportunities. And if the fight's going to be what it is in the Western Conference this year, right? Mm-hmm. making a run at the Cup is not a bad idea at this point, especially because I think if you get from an LAFC perspective, if you get through Carson, right, you have a much easier path than I think some of the other teams in the Cup still.
And remind me, Jeremiah, who does the Galaxy play after that El Tráfico Cup game?
After the El Tráfico, some team somewhere from another state.
Yeah, a bonus game, perhaps.
A bonus game, yes, perhaps. Well, but he did apologize for that, I think, finally, right, today?
Yes, he did in a possibly not sincere way, but yeah, no, that should be that El Tráfico Cup game is going to be like I think that's going to be fantastic. I mean, the Cup's been really entertaining. Like we had a lot of fun talking about Quake Sounders last week. I don't know if you caught that, but that was MLS Dark or After Dark brought to the Open Cup for sure. So it's been wild. It's been fun. It's been really, really interesting May so far. So yeah, so that brings us again. So Josh, before we let you go here, tell everybody where we can catch you and maybe a little bit about Counterpress Podcast if people want to get their LAFC news.
Yeah. So my partner and I, Kurt Kinsey, we co-host the Counterpress Podcast, where it's almost all purely tactics. We're just two guys who just like looking at passing triangles and things along that line way too much. And so it's kind of a tactics focused podcast. And like I said, you can find us on Twitter at the Counterpress Pod, something along that line. But yeah, fun. We're on all of the places you find podcasts. And then also we do, given that it's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I am involved with a group, Isang Bayan, where it's a Filipino, it's not really a supporters group, but it's just a group of Filipino supporters that come from various supporter groups within LAFC. And so we've been kind of trying to get our foot off the ground, kind of make our mark. The TSG, which is the Korean supporters group, I think they were featured on MLS on the website this past week, has kind of laid the foundation for us. And, so we appreciate the work that they've done. And so now we're just trying to, we've through different connections kind of found different, more and more Filipino supporters that were, that love LAFC. And so that's something that we're real interested. You can find us on Instagram at Isang Bayan.
Awesome. Yeah, well, good. Well, thanks so much. We loved having you on here. And if we meet in the conference finals, we'll definitely do that again and maybe find an occasion before that to check in with you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. All right. Well, thanks. Jeremiah, any final thoughts or
MLS this is
dark observations before
no more MLS After Dark observations. No, this is fun. I appreciate it. It's always good to hear from people who actually know about these teams as opposed to my usual 5 minutes of Wikipedia research before we do game previews. So I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, it's maybe another kicking up of a beautiful, fun rivalry between the teams. So I'm looking forward to more of those games for sure. All right, so enjoy the soccer, everybody. Thanks so much. Remember, rate, review, subscribe. Let people know. Again, we are trying to cover everything in the Western Conference. So awesome to have Josh on, and we're gonna look to have more guests on in the coming weeks. All right, thanks so much, and take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week.